we went to this meeting. We didn't realise it was a pitch because we hadn't had experience. We just turned up. Are you all right, do you want to have a chat? And they're like, go on, and you got your presentation? And we were like, shit, it's a pitch. One of the first things we did that really helped build ensuring you spend at least 20% of your time, your resource, energy in trying and testing something completely new.
As part of the LinkedIn Creator Program, my mission over the next 6 weeks is to create a podcast series where I interview other agency founders on exactly what it takes to build a successful agency. Join me as I set out to understand how they think, hopefully learn some tips and hear their stories. This is Confessions of an Agency Owner. Today's guest on Confessions of an Agency Owner is Dan Knowlton, one of the founding brothers of Knowlton Marketing. Along with his brother Lloyd, they produce some of the most entertaining content on LinkedIn, and they really stand out from their podcast, newsletter, videos, and daily posting. I wanted to learn more from Dan on how they find the time to do so much marketing and also produce it so consistently, alongside why they use humour as their approach to stand out. Dan was a great guest to have on the show, and if you're struggling to market your own business, I'm sure you'll get lots from it. Have a listen. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Am I guest number 3?
You're guest number 3. Yes, you are.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah,
I'm still finding my way a bit, but hopefully
you'll be fine, mate. You'll be fine.
Cool. Right. So the big question I've got for you, Dan, today really is like, you and Lloyd stick out for me as like completely unique, especially on social with the content you do. So I've got kind of 2 questions for you really. One, how the hell do you fit all the stuff you do into your day? And 2, what made you go down the route of like comedy and entertainment style for your marketing?
Okay, so I'll start with question 2 because it gives the backstory that leads into the answer to question 1. So how did we discover this? So we pretty much spent the first 3 years of running our agency in our parents' spare room, just us trying to figure out what on earth we were doing and what our unique kind of value proposition was to the world. So we built websites, we did training in social media, we created content, did everything basically. And over the years, we tried lots of different things. Some things worked, some things didn't in terms of growing our agency. And in 2017, we wanted to create a testimonials video. Once we'd got a few clients under our belt, we were like, right, this is the time to get a good testimonials video to build credibility to then attract new customers. But we knew that no one is going to watch a testimonials video. They're like, who's going to watch a 5-minute video of your customer saying nice things about you? It's not the kind of thing you'd sit down and watch like Netflix, is it?
No.
So we wanted to come up with something a bit creative. So we sort of racked our brains and we came up with this idea that we would actually go out and interview our customers like you would in a normal testimonials video to get the kind of credibility and social proof of them saying, yes, Knowlton is really good at what they do and that kind of thing. But we also thought, which is a bit weird, we would dress up as different characters pretending to be our own customers and sort of have a bit of a witty script that was like, yeah, Dan and Lloyd are great. And we had all these different sort of comedic characters and we cut the comedic characters in between the actual interviews with our customers.
Oh, brilliant.
And it made a bit of a video that was, and we posted it online, didn't think much of it. And at the time for us, it got like a few thousand views, a lot of comments of people saying nice stuff. And it actually drove quite a lot of new business for us. People saying, this is great, let's have a chat. And that was our first kind of light bulb moment of, wow, we can actually create content that's highly focused on a sales objective of driving new business for us, like a selfish objective, but it also is selfless as well because it provides value to the people watching it in terms of it's like entertaining and fun to watch. And that was the first real aha moment for us. And then we started to roll that out with our customers and thought, let's try and produce some entertaining, fun content that is also helping to drive sales for you. Started doing that with like small local companies. And then since then, we've now gone on to work with some of the biggest brands in the world and implementing that same approach, the selfish objective, but also delivering it in a selfless way.
Yeah. And I think, I think from a customer's point of view, it kind of gives the impression that you're fun to work with as well. And I think there's a lot to be said to that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think this is the thing that I've realized over the years as well, Chris, is all of our new business is inbound. So everything comes to us. And also everything comes to us pre-qualified. So instead of us trying to reach out to potential customers, say, hey, let's have a chat. Do you want to work with us? All of our opportunities are coming to us saying, I've seen what you do. really like the culture of the team, seen all your content. You know, we do a whole series called Inside Knowlton where we do a behind the scenes vlog of showing what it's like to work with us on set. So they've seen all of that stuff. They've listened to our podcast and seen what we're like to work with. And they already come to us saying, yep, we want to do this. Let's discuss how we can make it work. And for us, that saves a huge amount of resource in trying to convince people to work with us. And for me, who manages all of the sales in our business, it's much less stressful because I'm not trying to convince the unconvincible. They're already coming to us knowing that they want to work with us. It's a case of us figuring out how we can sort of package that up in a way that's best for them.
Do they all come to you with that approach in mind, at the entertainment style videos, or?
I'd say a large, like probably 70% do, but also the other sort of group of clients is come to us and say, we really love what you do, but we're not a funny brand, so we can't work with you. So I don't know if it's going to work. We actually had a bit of a challenge in our business where we were producing all of this sort of entertaining comedic content for our own brand, and we were turning off a lot of credible brands who we'd want to work with because they thought we're a serious, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When you sort of
company.
shoehorning yourself into that sort of comedy, and that could put some people off, I guess, couldn't it? Yeah.
You're exactly right, and we realised that problem because we had various talks to different people saying, "Oh, I was speaking to this great company, but they're a bit serious, so we wouldn't recommend them to you." And I'm there like, we've done loads of non-comedic campaigns for some really credible brands, like more emotive style campaigns or informative or educational, and we weren't doing a good enough job of communicating that stuff to the world. I guess because the fun stuff is so enjoyable and it's really tied in with Lloyd and my personalities, we always want to talk about like, this is such a fun creative thing, but you know, talking about running an emotive campaign for a care company about putting people into or supporting elderly people probably isn't as exciting, but it's also, we've done a brilliant job with that, so we should be sharing that as well. So it's definitely been a challenge. Yeah. So also I think that was the first kind of part of the question. The other thing you asked.
Well, it's just like you do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You do a podcast weekly. You do a newsletter every Friday. You do these videos. I mean, you now host events, as we met the other day. You know, you post every single day. You know, what else are you doing? And I think, like, for me as an agency owner as well, it's, well, you know, you're in the same boat. It's the time, isn't it? I mean, how do you find the time to do all of that? But not just do it. You do it consistently and you do it well. And I think that, you know, that really sets a bar that people are probably going, how the hell do you do that?
Well, firstly, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that. It's nice when people notice it because we do put a huge amount of effort into it. So thank you. So I guess the first thing to note is it's definitely been a journey. So like, and I've sort of have seen myself doing this in the past, looking at other people who are doing different things in their business really well. Like, I really look up to you guys and think, wow, like
thanks,
you are absolutely smashing it when you share some of your case study and stuff. I'm like, I want to be like Honcho. But you also want to be careful not to like compare yourself too much and then be disheartened. So it's always a journey. And also like comparing yourself as well, like, you know, your step number 10 for you is very different to someone else's step number 50. So you're in a different position in the journey to them. So firstly, don't think that you've got to instantly be as doing stuff as good as your competitors or someone else in your industry. So manage your own expectations that it takes time and it's a journey to get from where you are now to where you want to be. So that's the first thing. The second thing for us, the biggest light bulb moment in terms of optimizing our processes and actually consistently implementing an effective marketing process for our own company was when we actually shifted our mindset and put more focus in scheduling time to work on our own marketing. So previously, marketing would be an afterthought. It would be like, right, we've got some campaigns going on, some projects, let's work on that. Oh, let's do a post about it randomly. Like, oh, okay, let's do that. Or let's write a blog. Or, in the early days, we used to write articles for publications and stuff, and it would be more of an ad hoc thing. Like, okay, we've got some time to work on marketing. The real shift for us when we eventually managed to move out of our parents' spare room and actually hired a team and got an office and worked with bigger brands, and this has evolved over time. So the first process we had, we just thought, right, we're going to schedule every single Thursday. We called it Content Thursday. So one day a week, purely anyone in the business had to work entirely on our own marketing and our content. And that's not necessarily the best way of doing it, but that actually got us thinking and prioritizing our own marketing over everything else consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first kind of thing we did, and that allowed us to start posting things consistently. Since then, that's evolved a lot over time. As we've started to hire more of a team, and we've got lots more projects going on, it becomes more challenging to just set a day aside for everyone. So now what we do is we allocate up to 25% of our whole team's resource a month to marketing.
So you don't have, do you have like a dedicated marketer then, or is it a real team effort?
So I like head everything up. We've got a marketing manager that I kind of work with closely, and then we've got our production team that support us to produce all of the content. And then we also bring in obviously Lloyd with the podcast and supporting with scripts and things. So it is a real team effort, but there's a few key people like me and Yaz, who's our marketing manager, who put most of our focus on our own marketing. But yeah, at the start of the month, we have that up to 25% resource, and then I will look at everything we're doing, look at our strategy, and allocate that resource accordingly. And thinking, so for example, you mentioned that we hosted an event at Agencynomics. That obviously comes out of our 25% marketing time. So I had to think, right, we're doing that event that's going to take that amount of time. So where are we going to sort of cut that time from and do less in other areas? And it's evolving as well. Like, we're not perfect, but just setting that time out at the start is really important.
Yeah, because I think a lot of agencies, we're guilty of it. Marketing kind of comes last, especially if you're busy, because you've got to service your clients first, right? And it often gets neglected by a lot of agencies because they just don't get to it. So I think one of the key things for me was getting a marketing manager in, actually, and you've then got someone accountable that is, looking at that all the time.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act as well, Chris. Like, what you don't want to do, and what we found sometimes we go too far and focus too much on marketing, and then we're like, oh man, we haven't actually allocated enough of our team's time to deliver client work, which is another challenge. So it's a constant balancing act, and no one's perfect. I think that first really important step is allocating the time to make it happen, and then actually start trying your process and looking at how it's performing, and then start to make tweaks accordingly.
And how important would you say momentum is? Because obviously once you get going, it's that momentum, isn't it? That's when you start seeing the results.
Definitely, yeah. Like, so for example, going on that specific point, looking at our podcast, we started our podcast, I think it was February 2020. And I remember our first podcast that we did, it probably took us 2 and a bit days to prep for just what we were going to say in the 45-minute podcast. And then all the setup and everything, huge amount of resource and time to prep for that. And we delivered it. And I remember, like, my voice was shaking a bit. We were because we'd done videos before, but it's a totally new format trying to...
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. Mate, you're doing really well. Like, you're way better than I was when I started.
So what do I do with my hands? That's the biggest thing I struggle with. Yeah.
Yeah, there's those little things over time you just start to realize, like... Yeah, but then fast forward to now, it probably takes Lloyd and I an hour.
How many episodes have you done?
Good question. I think we're on... How many episodes are we on? 200 or 100 and something. Wow. 100 something, maybe yeah. I think actually, no, 120 was released yesterday, so 120. But yeah, it's just like training a muscle, like anything. You start off, you're crap.
Yep.
And... you're no, I'm not saying you, Chris. You're starting a lot better than I was, and then you just over time you get used to feeling comfortable having those conversations. And the one thing that really changed for me in terms of becoming more comfortable on camera and in the podcast is just feeling like you're speaking to a friend, rather than thinking there's people watching, I need to say good stuff. It's more just, it comes across way more natural when you start to feel comfortable and stuff, which just takes time.
I mean, I've only really started doing video for the last year, really, and again, like, it's been such a journey getting comfortable, just even having it in front of you. You literally just start laughing, and you just feel like a bit of a dick, to be honest with you.
It's a weird thing, because there's some weird thing, like when someone puts a camera in front of you for the first time ever and you're completely not used to it, you almost feel like I used to turn into a robot and turn into a completely different person. So I could talk I could say, practice and say good things between Lloyd and I, and then a camera would be there, and I'd think, oh my God, I need to say something good, and it's just incredibly nerve-wracking. But something I found, if anyone's sort of watching or listening and can resonate with this in terms of that, that challenge of having the confidence to feel comfortable on camera, the thing that really helped me was early on I started making like Instagram stories and Snapchat. When Snapchat was a bigger thing, and Instagram stories, I would document my day and things I was doing growing our agency, and just it sounds stupid, but just speaking to that, looking at that piece of glass, your smartphone, and speaking into it every day, you started to feel comfortable talking to a piece of glass as if so it felt like talking to a person. And over time, training that muscle, when you do get into a conversation like this or on a podcast, you've trained that muscle so many times that it just feels like you're chatting to a friend, and it just takes time to keep doing it.
I think it is, isn't it? You've just got to keep doing it. I mean, I'm massively behind you on that journey, but it's getting easier and easier as we go. Yeah, so that's really great advice.
Yeah.
So what, in terms of like what your most powerful channel is, would you say, like in terms of, or someone getting started? Because obviously, if you was to say to someone, market your agency and list off the things that you do on a weekly basis, that's going to be hard. But what would you say would be the first step for someone?
So I'd say, so in terms of what works best for us as an agency, there's really a few key channels. So LinkedIn's huge for us. LinkedIn, is where we probably still get most of our new business from, in terms of sort of CMOs and heads of marketing getting in touch with us and wanting to see how we can help them. Also, our podcast, Business Anchors. So what's quite interesting about our podcast is we started it as an experiment back in February 2020, just before COVID happened. We were like, every year we focus at least 20% of our marketing resource in trying and testing something completely new. So it could be a new platform, a new strategy, a new tactic. And in February 2020, that 20% test was our podcast. And we for a whole year, we produced a podcast every week, and it basically made peanuts. We probably won a couple of new contracts that mentioned the podcast in some capacity, but and a year in, we eventually made a podcast episode which was about Lloyd losing £2 million worth of Bitcoin, which is a story for another time. We did a whole podcast episode on it. There's a reason I'm telling you this. And then a few weeks later, we got a phone call from a marketing manager from a startup who said, I've listened to the podcast. Can we have a chat about how supporting us? We then got onto a pitch, and I got onto a pitch with the marketing manager who I'd met and the MD of this startup who I'd never met. Right. The first thing he says to me is, did Lloyd get his Bitcoin back? And I was like, what? He's like, I listen to your podcast when I run every week. Love it. We want to work with you. And did Lloyd get his Bitcoin back? And that was another real light bulb moment for me, realizing and that turned into our first sort of 6-figure contract from the podcast. That made me realize the power of not just podcasting, but actually putting time and effort and resource into trying and testing something new. Like now for us, our 20% test is TikTok. Right now, TikTok isn't the best platform to drive B2B business, but I think it will be. It will be at one point, the way that it's going. Definitely having that 20% test. And so for us, the podcast, LinkedIn, also referrals as well, and current customers sort of signing up for new contracts and things. In terms of a first step for anyone listening, in terms of what they can do with their marketing, I'd really say schedule some time to actually think about it as a first step. Like I mentioned before, actually putting time towards your marketing is really important. So set that time aside to actually sit down and actually come up with some ideas and that kind of thing.
But how do you come up with so many ideas? I mean, like, you don't even have guests on your podcast. So for me, I'm doing this. You're doing the majority of the talking. Every week you do a podcast and it's just you two, and you find a new topic to talk about. That must be exhausting.
I'll tell you how we do it easily.
Okay.
It's really simple and easy for us. So first of all, we have like a strategy for the podcast that helps drive all of the topics. The strategy for the podcast is, ultimately, we want this communication channel to drive new business for our agency. We don't just want it to be a fun thing to listen to and that kind of, it's ultimately to drive new business. So there's 2 streams to allowing us to do that. First of all, one, it must be interesting to listen to for our target market. and our target market are marketers from brands. So we have to ensure that marketers from brands and business owners will find whatever we're talking about interesting and useful. That's the one thing it has to be, and it has to be fun and enjoyable to listen to. The second thing is it needs to subtly demonstrate that we as an agency deliver on our promises to our customers. So the way we do that is intertwine examples of campaigns we've run for clients, results we've achieved for clients. We talk about actual real life examples. So you've got the two things happening. One, highly targeted to our target market of marketers, and two, it's helping us because it's communicating we can deliver on our promises and it's driving new business. In terms of how we come up with the specific topic ideas, it's really simple. Each week we look at what's happened in our agency and the lessons we've learned and the things that are going on. So, for example, we recently did a stint of sobriety and gave up alcohol to see how that impacted our lives and running the business. And we learned a huge amount of lessons from that we thought marketers and business owners and anyone, that was relevant to a lot more people, but we shared the lessons that we learned because of that. We've also, for example, I went to LA recently to go to Adobe Max because Adobe Express sponsor our podcast, and we did a whole episode that was released yesterday about how to get international clients or international sponsorship, and again that was useful, but it also communicated credibility to our audience that we're actually practicing what we preach.
I mean, talk to us about that sponsorship then. I mean, how did that come about for your podcast?
So we've done a whole podcast on this as well.
Sorry, I missed that one.
No. But we did a whole podcast about relationship building, and it's all to do with relationship building. So a number of years ago, I met this guy who ran a software company to do with social media, and over years, I've spoken at various events that he's spoken at. We've got to know each other. We collaborated with them and produced some content for them and stuff like a while ago. And over the years, that relationship's been building. And then last year, Adobe acquired their software.
I think I know who you're talking about here, but
yeah. and then he became part of that team and suggested that we talk to Adobe about podcast sponsorship. And then that's kind of how it started, really, just building that relationship. And then, went from
Next thing, you're jetting off to LA.
Yeah, that was wicked. It was really, really cool. We got to meet. There's like loads of sort of Adobe Express ambassadors around the world that they all flew in, and we all got to hang out and go to the event. And yeah, it was really, really cool. So
if you could give, you talked about maybe just setting aside that time to focus on. Would you say focus on one thing, or in terms of like getting started, and you've seen it, I've seen it, how powerful LinkedIn can be. What would you say to someone that's nervous of even doing that? Because how much of it sits with the agency founder? And again, if they're early in that journey, they might not be ready for a marketing manager yet that can take some of that strain off of them.
So I think a few things. And are you talking specifically about like agencies now?
Yeah, specifically for an agency owner. Yeah. Getting started to get their name out there a bit more.
Yeah. So I'd start to look. Again, spend that time to look at strategy and to break it down into a few kind of key areas. First of all, really set out what are you trying to achieve here. And like we didn't do this properly for even the first couple of years of our business. We didn't look to the future. We were just like, let's just try and figure out how to have a sustainable business. But it's really important to start with the end in mind. And it could be a rough idea of where you want to end. But like for us now, we have a 2030 plan, which we did in 2020, which is a 10-year plan. And we know what we want that, say, end point. It isn't necessarily the end point, but we know where we want to be in 2030. And we've built out a whole plan to get there, what we want the team to look like, revenue, profit, all of that stuff, so that we've started with the end in mind and then got a clear idea of where we're heading. That's really, for us, that was really...
Knowing your destination before you start really helps, doesn't it?
Yes. Exactly, yeah. That was a really important sort of starting point for us. Once we did that, then it was a case of actually building a bit of a plan for how we're going to get there. So, really thinking about, again, this is like strategy 101, but thinking about who are we trying to convince to become a customer? Because, again, early on, we just wanted anyone to be a customer. When we started out and we're in our parents' spare room, we were like, anyone who wants to work with us and pay us anything, we will work with you. And obviously, over the years, when you get more experience and you're less naive,
Learning
you
to
start
say
to
no.
realise, yeah, exactly. And you get in a better position to be able to say no, because you deliver better work, better results. The caliber of client you're working with increases, and I'm sure you've had this, Chris, because looking at the clients you work with now, it's like top tier, God tier.
Yeah, but
I'm sure it didn't used to be like that.
No. I mean, well, I was quite lucky in terms of like the first brands that I worked with were big brands, and that kind of set the tone. But learning to say no, because like you say, when you're up against it, and someone knocks on your door, anyone, and they ask you to even do something you don't even do, it's really difficult not to say yes if you're trying to grow and meet targets. But yeah, that learning to say no is one of the biggest lessons you can learn, because the wrong client ruins it. Yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to learn by having a really shit situation with a client that you said yes to that you shouldn't have, because we did that.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's
then
the same with
you
so
go
many
through,
lessons, though, isn't it? You don't know until it happens, and then
you go through the motions of, they're incredibly difficult to deal with. They're never happy, and they've got extremely high expectations, and they change the goalpost. And then you're like, right, we should have never said yes to this. And also, it comes with experience that you start to see the telltale signs of those types of clients as well. So you can start to see the signs early on and really nip it in the bud early on and sort of communicate this isn't something we want to do. But yeah, learning to say no is really important. So yeah, setting out the objective, looking at your kind of who you're trying to target and who your audience are, and then really figuring out where are you going to start to create content and communicate with those people to attract, convince, and convert them to do whatever that you want them to do. Whether it's, well, for an agency, it will be like becoming a customer, but it could, for other brands, it could be buying your products. Where are those people looking for answers that you can solve, basically? And for us, one of the main places now is LinkedIn, and on our podcast and that kind of thing. But for you, like for other agency owners, it could be through like optimizing their site with SEO, or it could be attending events. And you also asked earlier about should you focus on one thing or a few things. I think one of the biggest mistakes we made early on was trying to do everything, and we did everything in a very average way. Whereas when we did do what you said and actually honed in and said, right, let's focus on producing great content for social as a starting point, then we realized, now we've put all of our energy into this. We've done that really well. Once we've sort of nailed that, then we could move on to other areas like starting the podcast or speaking at events and that kind of thing.
And what one of those things do you think's given you the best, accelerated you the most? Is it speaking? Is it the podcast? Is it the LinkedIn posts? What?
It's completely changed over time. So I remember, this takes me way back. One of the first things we did that really helped build my personal brand, because initially our strategy was to build my personal brand, and that was what we did to attract clients. Now it's to build the Knowlton brand and the podcast. Yep. But in those early days, the thing that really helped that was writing articles for public, like credible publications. So I used to write articles for Social Media Examiner, which is one of the most well-known social media sort of publications out there, and various other content marketing institute, and that would help position me as an industry leader. That then brought inbound opportunities in, because they'd read an article of me teaching them how to do something to do with social media, and they thought, I want you to help me with that. So that was where we started. After that, then it started to be speaking at events. So actually, not like speaking at events and trying to sell to people, more thinking, right, what have I learned whilst growing my Twitter account? Or what have I learned whilst creating content on social media and producing talks around that and educating an audience? But that completely stopped when COVID happened.
Yeah.
That our main way of getting new business was speaking at events, completely cut off in March 2020, which is where the podcast then started to overtake that.
Okay.
Because so it completely changes over time. But this is why, again, I want to go back to that thing of ensuring you spend at least 20% of your time, your resource, energy in trying and testing something completely new. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to stick to the same things that you feel have always worked, but you're never going to find the new thing that people are going to shift their focus towards. So definitely make sure you're doing that. I mean, at one point, we even when we were making weird sketch videos wearing wigs, we tested a whole thing, sending these wig packages to decision makers at brands, like a package with a wig in it. We looked at our LinkedIn analytics to see who in our target market had engaged with our sort of comedic sketch videos, and then we sent them a personalised wig, and we actually won quite a lot of business that way.
Really
yeah. Well, I'd be interested, Chris. I know this isn't just, but Where do you guys get most of your new business from? Because you seem to be smashing it, and I want to learn from you.
Well, I mean, LinkedIn is honestly, it's definitely one of the biggest things. It's also referrals. I still get conversations from people I worked with years ago. So I think maintaining relationships is so important. We're talking to a really huge brand at the moment, and that's someone I worked with 15 years ago. And I haven't spoken to him since I worked with him. He was in my team when I ran SEO at PC World. I hadn't spoken to him, and he dropped me a message out of the blue. Um, and I didn't realize the brand he was working at, but they're pretty big at the moment. They're a big fashion brand, and he said, "I finally got the opportunity to work with you," and he's been following me the whole time. So it just goes to show that like you say, leaving that impression and that stuff you're putting out, even though you think you're going to put a post out and then someone's going to inquire, it doesn't work that way. It's about nurturing them and sticking out. And I think what you guys do really well, just quickly, is that. So like I say, for me, it's the clown. Your podcast, Dan, I'll be honest, my son has Apple TV on his thing, and he managed to change the home screen to podcast. Every time I went into his room, I'd turn it on, and there's business anchors up there. So they're really following me around. But we've tried, yeah. I mean, so like for us, we're obviously an SEO agency, but believe it or not, we don't really focus on SEO for marketing ourselves, because we kind of target big brands, and like those big brands are not going to type SEO agency into Google and look for an SEO, right? So there's that. The lot of the content is kind of blogs and things like that. And what we're trying to do more of is white papers and really insightful stuff. Even the little things that are like almost just regurgitating news that's out there, like the search updates. Like we've done that for, I don't know, quite a while, but it's something we just kept with, and it's just breaking down that information into a really concise format. And again, people start following you for that as well.
I think.
I was just going to say, but we're behind. Honestly, I don't speak at events. I've got someone coming on this show to help me with confidence there. It scares the life out of me to do that. We don't do enough of that. We need to do our own events. We need to do more webinars. There's so much more that we aren't even touching, which goes back to, like you say, having that split of the channels that you target, really.
That's exciting though, I think.
Yeah.
To show that like you've had this success you have, and you haven't even touched those areas. Like, I'd think that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It just shows that there's still potential there, right? I mean, and the networking bit, and the speaking at events, totally. And it's something we're trying to push the team more to do as well. And like you say, that personal brand bit, what I don't want is a lot of the business comes through myself, and it's about us as an agency. It can't rely on me. Or it's got to be building the brand of the agency. And we're
going through exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and that's why we rebranded as well, to be honest, back in 2019, because we were sort of just looking like everyone else, and put huge investment and time, to come up with Honcho. And it's been a game changer. It's been the best thing we ever did. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, is this going to break me? But,
what is the backstory to the name and stuff?
So I think media was I think media, and it's like this. It just sounds like a crappy SME agency, right? And we.
No comment.
And I was like, it does. It's crap. But it came out. I invented that in 2008. When iPod was coming out. So like
right. So
I was cool then, Dan. Identified the fact that we work with these big brands, and with this little blue and white crappy logo that looks like everyone else. And I was like, we've got to reinvent ourselves, but the next 10 years, it needs to be something new. So I brought a guy called Kevin in. I literally went on LinkedIn and I looked for the best creative director I could find. And he'd worked with PlayStation, Nike, Heineken, and I loved his stuff. So I got him in, and we worked together for about a year. And honestly, we came up with some awful names. And at one point it was just like, oh my God, are we ever going to get there? And one of the big things for our business, especially at the time, and for me, was like, I felt like I was pulling a bit of a bag of rocks up a hill. So I was the leader trying to drive things forward. And what I wanted was a team of leaders, a team of people that can all help me drag that bag of rocks up the hill rather than me dragging them up. So leadership became a big thing, and about, how we can make everyone in the team think like a leader, and not rely on delegation or being told. And leader, one of the words for leader, head honcho, was used in World War II by the Japanese for like the RAF and Air Force people. And that's how Head Honcho came about, and Honcho.
Nice.
And earlier on in the process, I was very much retail, e-commerce. That's where a lot of our clients were. So that's how the barcode came into it. So initially it was like retail search. We came up with some awful names. But the barcode came from this big focus of the retail, and the name came from the want and need of the brand and the team to become more, think like leaders themselves, a team of leaders. So,
did you know when someone said Honcho, did you know like that's it, or did it take a bit of think?
Yeah. When we got to that point, that was this is it, and exciting. And then all of a sudden it's like, you've then got to communicate that to your team and convince them. And luckily we showed them it, they loved it. And the key people in my business were like, good. Yeah, let's do this. And again, the retail thing was like the shop in our reception, it all came from the retail side. And I thought, well, we get these e-commerce brands come to our office. Wouldn't it be great if they came into a shop?
I love that. I remember seeing that.
And we put it in a bag, and it can't just be like a crappy bag. It's got to be a boutique style bag. So
how much do you feel like, because I saw you post about that, and I think this is something that completely makes you stand out. Because I'm sure that was quite a significant investment to get all the great, lovely products and settle that out. And do you have you got the return on investment back from that yet? Do you think? I know it's not directly trackable, but do you feel like it's more of a brand piece?
It's definitely a brand piece.
Memorable piece.
I mean, I want to do more designs and more hoodies, and we were getting so many people asking us for hoodies and t-shirts. The entrepreneur in me suddenly was like, let's create an e-commerce shop. Let's sell these things. But then quickly realised that trying to make like £8 on a t-shirt versus trying to sell an SEO retainer for 10 grand or whatever a month.
It's kind
like, where should I put my time? So I think it has,
new shiny object comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely, it's part of our brand, such a huge part of our brand that it does, people remember you for it. And the conversations I have still about that, and people that email me asking for a hoodie or a t-shirt still, it was worth it. And I think even the retail unit, I'm quite a perfectionist, and I saw that retail unit. It was actually based on a Nike store in New York. I hadn't seen it in person, but even the retail unit I had made specifically to match that identically. Yeah. So.
Wow. Yeah, it looks so cool. Maybe you've done a few posts about it and stuff, but yeah, definitely makes you stand out.
No, and I think standing out is, again, one of the reasons why I've talked to you today, because you guys stand out in terms of your marketing, and it's a lot of agencies go back to simple blog posts, and it's such an easy fallback. What should we do? Well, let's write blog posts, and it doesn't quite have the reach that it used to. Obviously, you can share them now as articles, and then you can tie that into a newsletter on LinkedIn and things like that, and you've got other publications that you can publish that stuff on. But being remembered is so important, like I say, and you guys are memorable. It's
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is trying to stand out, especially in like marketing agency land, because everyone says they're the most creative and the most this and the most that. But for I think something that's helped us actually more over the last few years is really honing down our values, and we've mapped out this positive impact plan which sets the whole direction for our business. And I think having that sort of clear North Star to aim towards, and that's tied in with the things we actually care about and the things the team cares about, and getting them involved in that process is really, because it sort of starts internally, but then that filters out to your external communication, because this is what we're heading towards, this is what we're doing. You start to see that online, and it helps you stand out rather than just being your generic, we're an agency, we do what every other agency does. It's like, this is what we actually give a shit about, and we're going to work hard to do that. Showing
those values is so important, aren't they? And then in terms of what you offer now, is it the same as what you offered at the beginning, in terms of services? No. So how is that?
No way.
Has that learned, that process, is that refined as well, based on, we're good at this,
definitely,
or we don't want to work with that?
So we started, I remember naively thinking, I'm going to start a full service agency, when I'd never had any experience working for an agency, and I'd just done a degree in marketing. How naive was I? And we started out thinking, we're going to build websites, we're going to do SEO, we're going to create content on social, we're going to do paid ads. Just thought we could do everything. And like I said, that first few years of trying and testing lots of different things, we eventually in 2017, like I said, found that unique approach to creating content, like we call it advertainment or whatever, with that testimonials video. That was really the first point where we saw a lot of success with something that we loved doing, was really enjoyable, drove loads of new business, and lots of people were saying they loved it. That was the moment when we sort of thought, right, we need to, and it's tied to our personalities and that kind of stuff, we need to go all in on this thing that and we, like I said, we started trying with small local companies. We first of all worked with a gym. I remember producing these like sort of comedic sketch videos for this gym, where it was sort of poking fun at gym culture, and subtly tying in the benefits of this gym. And we did a whole ad campaign, worked incredibly well, and that was our first small case study that like we've applied what we learned with our testimonials video to a client campaign. It's done incredibly well. Now let's go all in on this and roll it out to the bigger brands. So it definitely, in terms of what we offered, it's evolved over time based on the trying and testing different things and seeing what we were good at. And trust me, there was lots of other things we did before that we weren't as good at, and it takes time in trying and testing to eventually find our service offering now, which is really creative content for social and running paid social campaigns to deliver trackable e-com sales, B2B leads, that kind of thing.
So what was your best bit of marketing? If you could look at all of the things you've done, all the videos you've done, what would you isolate as the best thing you've ever? Would it be the wig? Sending the wigs? Or?
Well, there's a few that I don't know, because we have I know it sounds sort of stupid. We have so much fun making some of these videos. Like sometimes I just really struggle to even shoot them because Lloyd just makes me laugh so much when he's just is dressed up as these different characters and saying so. Because we've known each other obviously all our lives. He knows he can say one thing to me and it just completely triggers me. But I guess some of the sketches we've done, I actually reshared one of them recently, Marketers in Real Life, where we dressed up as different characters. That was one of the first videos we did that really popped off and drove lots of new business in, was us. We did this whole sketch series where we had like an interviewer interviewing different people for a job, and the different people were representing different marketing channels. So like influencer marketing, leaflets, pay-per-click, and that kind of thing. And that was quite creative. And I remember something that really worked in that actually, which was another light bulb moment for us, was about 4 minutes into the video. It was like a 5-minute video. We sort of looked at the camera and said, "You're literally watching this for 4 minutes and it's an advert for our business. We know what we're doing with marketing. Become a customer." And then carried on. The amount of people that commented saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe I was watching this advert and was loving it." And so that worked really well. Recently, we did something that worked really well actually, which has attracted a really big drinks company that you would have heard of, is we did a GCSE drama video.
Okay.
So there's a TikToker called Jack something, I can't remember his name now, but he makes these parody videos where he sort of pokes fun at what it was like in a GCSE drama class, where there's just lots of things that happen in a GCSE drama class where everyone's overacting and stuff. And we did our own version of that, but did it as if it was a marketing ad for our company, and it did really well on LinkedIn. And got a number of messages from some really decent brands saying, "I've seen this, we want to work with you." Brilliant. And we've like pitched them and stuff. So that was another good one. Anything like comedic like that, we have a lot of fun doing. There's obviously all of the podcast content, which is more value add and that kind of thing.
And you can repurpose all that content as well, can't you? I mean, you're literally building a bank that next year you can post a lot of that again. And some people will have seen it and they'll enjoy it again, but other people will have never seen it, and that's helping fill your content calendar. What about your worst bit, Dan? Give me a failure.
Worst bit. I think anything where like anything that's happened with a client that wasn't expected. Like I won't go into specific details of things, but in the past we've sort of maybe chased an invoice and someone's just completely cancelled everything on us because they were offended by it, or like some strange things have happened over the years where we've actually properly tried to analyse what happened there, and you just don't know. But anything like that has been sort of times where there haven't been great times. And also I guess like all of the times that we mentioned earlier of making those mistakes that are actually good in the long run because they teach you stuff. Like I remember Lloyd and I, one of our first big pitches, well, I say big pitch. We went to this meeting. We didn't realise it was a pitch because we hadn't had experience. They wanted us to go there and pitch them our ideas. We just turned up. We just turned up. You all right, do you want to have a chat? And they're like, go on, and you got your presentation? And we were like, we drove all the way to Brighton for this, but like 2 hours. They're like, you got your presentation? And we were like, shit, it's a pitch. And then we had to.
How did you bag that?
I remember we never won it, obviously, but I think Lloyd got out the laptop and started showing our website and talking through our services or something. It was just those moments where you want the floor to swallow you up.
Yeah,
but
we've all been there, though, haven't we? So honestly, brilliant having you on, Dan. Where can people find out about you and showcase your services? So now you're doing paid social and video creation, yeah?
Yeah, I'd say it's mainly video and social content production and running paid social ads for to drive e-commerce sales or B2B lead generation or building awareness, that kind of thing. We've worked with lots of big brands like FIFA, Wahl, Nestle, Eurotunnel, various different brands. In terms of where you can find us, definitely check out Business Anchors, our podcast, which just search Business Anchors, or I guess on most social platforms. So I'm mainly active on kind of LinkedIn. Just search my name, Dan Knowlton, and you'll see some of our weird and wonderful content.